He said, my life has been so crazy. It's been so larger than life that to tell it in a straightforward way just doesn't do it justice. So the remit and the brief from the beginning was very clear, was that he wanted to have a fantasy version of his life, something that was larger than life, something that explodes off the screen, not as it happened exactly, but as the most fantastical version of it might have taken place. And that was our starting point for the film that we wanted to make. Once we knew the film we wanted to make sure that the script, I think all great films start with a terrific script. And we wanted to work with Lee Hall again, who Elton and I had both worked with on Billy Elliot, the musical. And Lee, as a British writer, really had an innate understanding of Britain at that time, and the culture and the world, working class Britain of the 60s, and the emergence of rock and roll in the 60s and 70s, and the language and the people and the way they lived. And we wanted Lee to really get inside all of that and nail the authenticity of the world at that time. But we also said, let's make the musical numbers big, let's make them large, let's make them fantastical. And also the notion of taking the catalog and moving it around, so not using the music chronologically as it was written, but using it to bring out emotional truths in our storytelling and reveal things about our characters and reveal things about where they were going in their life at that time. So taking a song from the 1990s and using it in the 1950s and having it play beautifully in terms of giving a wonderful musical narrative and power to an emotional scene. Matthew and I were having coffee, and he said he'd always wanted to work with a musical film. And he loved Elton, and he loved his music. And I said, look, we have this script, Rocketman. We've been working with different people. I'd love you to just take a look at the script and tell me what you think. And he read Lee's script, and he loved it and thought it was very powerful, and had lots of ideas. But I think the biggest revelation for me was when Matthew, who launched Taron really in the Kingsman films, revealed to me that Taron was a fantastic singer, which I didn't know. And then Taron went on to record I'm Still Standing at the end of the animated movie Sing. And so the pieces of the puzzle started to fit together, because to have the opportunity to have a really talented young actor who has a fantastic screen presence, who also has extraordinary musical talent, that's a very hard thing to come by. That's a hard thing to find. And Taron being British and possessing all of that extraordinary talent, that was something we thought was exactly what the film needed. Elton is very uniquely British. He's very what I would call blokey British. And I think Dexter, as a young child actor, very much come through the British entertainment industry from a young boy up until the present day, starting as an actor and now a very talented director. He had the perspective that I think you need to bring to tell a story like this. He also had the great experience of working with Taron on Eddie the Eagle, which he did a fantastic job on. And so Matthew and I really thought that the combination of Taron and Dexter together, again, would be exactly what this film needed. What differentiates Rocketman from other traditional biopics is the fantasy element in our film. It's not exactly as Elton's life happened, fact for fact, date for date. We move things around a lot, and we embellish, and we have fun, and we celebrate, and we blow things up and make them larger than life. So that makes it very different. But when I watch the film and I chart the journey of the storytelling, it's very much the spirit of Elton's life. I feel we're authentically very, very closely aligned with the real journey of Elton's life and what it was for him, and the humanity of the journey that he had to go on. Music coming into his life as a young boy, it being this driving, unstoppable force that pulled him out of a very unhappy childhood and an unhappy home, that opened a door to a world that was full of infinite possibilities at a time when rock and roll was this new thing, and after Elvis happened, nothing was ever the same ever again. And that was a huge inspiration to Elton, and an opportunity to escape from the unhappy childhood that he had, and also to reinvent himself from the unlikable person and unlovable person he thought he was. The other thing that differentiates our film is Elton is still alive and here today, and how nice that we can create a life that celebrates his extraordinary journey as a musician, as an artist, as a human being, and see him come out through the other side and see him living the life he's living today. We need to celebrate people more for their differences, and Elton, became a success, A, because of his talent, but B, because he was always trying to be true to himself. Even if he wasn't loving himself, he was still trying to be true to his passions in music and presenting himself in a way to the world that he was transformative for him and transformative for everyone else. He was very involved in the script development, so he knows the journey that we're going on. He was also very involved in the creation of the music, the selection of Taron, seeing what Taron could do musically and what he could achieve and the places he could go. Because at the end of the day, that's the side of it that Elton knows and understands better than anybody. But he also says, look, I'm not a filmmaker, it's not my world, and I'm very, very close to it, and I perhaps can't bring the objectivity that's needed to tell the story, from the right perspective to really do it justice. So he then lets the filmmakers free to come together and to create what they feel is the best version of his life, for a cinematic audience. I'm so happy that this film gives us an opportunity to celebrate the extraordinary friendship that Elton and Bernie Taupin have. They met completely randomly over 50 years ago, a chance meeting in an office where Elton went in to pursue, songwriting, where he said, I can write melodies, but I can't write lyrics. And a man named Ray Williams, off a desk with stacks of envelopes and boxes of reel-to-reel tapes, pulls an envelope, an unopened envelope, off the table and puts it in Elton's hand and says, right, why don't you go and try and write some music to this? That is kismet. That is magic. That's when the universe, everything aligns to create something very, very special. And the fact that Elton and Bernie are still great friends today, closer than ever, it's just a celebration of that great friendship. And I think a really positive message to send to the world that you can work with people, you can find, if you find the right people, you really understand each other and you really work hard and respect each other and love each other, it can last a lifetime. Jamie Bell plays Bernie Taupin and does a terrific job. He and Taron together on camera have the right chemistry. When they meet and they become friends, it feels so real and feels like a beautiful, loving friendship, just like the one in real life. And to have Richard Madden playing John Reed, Richard is such a fantastically visceral actor. I knew him from Cinderella and I knew him from Game of Thrones, but when I saw him in Bodyguard, that was a really powerful performance. And he was riveting in that role. And we had the opportunity to cast Richard just before Bodyguard came out, so we didn't know that was going to happen. And he had that smoldering Scottish kind of sexiness about him that just seemed so perfect for the way John Reed is portrayed in this film. And we cast him, we watched his audition tape, we thought he was great. And then Bodyguard happened, and has become this big international success. So we feel very lucky to have an actor as talented and as appropriate for the role as Richard, but also to get him at this moment where there's so much celebration and appreciation of him as an actor. Giles Martin has an extraordinary musical pedigree. His father, George Martin, was always referred to as the fifth Beatle. And so Giles, from a young boy, grew up around music and grew up very much around, the music that Elton was creating and the Beatles were creating. Air Studios, which was Giles's father's studio. Elton used to work in the 60s and go in and get session writing, session performing jobs, going into the offices and talking to Giles's father's assistants and getting jobs recording with the Hollies and Derek and the Dominoes and other artists. And Giles has gone on to be an extraordinary producer in his own right, working, reinventing the Beatles, great classic catalog for stage in Las Vegas, and doing, beautiful new versions of the recordings to keep the Beatles music fresh and alive. He was such an obvious natural choice for us because of that background and because of that pedigree. And he's also just a really, really great collaborator. I hope when the film comes out that people, first of all, are entertained. I hope they're transported and taken on a journey where they learn something about what goes into creating an extraordinary life, and also learn something about how life is never a straightforward journey, how we all encounter problems along the way. And I think to see Elton's life journey and then to see where he is today will really hopefully make people realize that life is a journey. It's not straightforward, it's not easy, but you can always come out the other end. I think people will root for that and find inspiration in that.